Hello and welcome to another episode of Love Selling, Hate Sales. You know, one of the things that gets lost a little bit when we talk about sales, we often think about, B2B SaaS, you're an individual contributor, you walk into a company like Oracle and you follow a process and, you're pretty much put into something that you acquire or walk into when you go sell for a big company. But what about the other side of the coin? There are hundreds, if not millions of founders out there who create amazing products and services, but they don't have the sales background to bring it to market. And I hate to say it, but if nobody knows who you are and you can't sell it, it doesn't matter how great it is, your company's going to go under pretty fast. So today on the show, what we're going to talk about is how can founders and CEOs and early stage companies really use the sales part of the equation to their advantage and go to market and build a process and build a system for how to do this. And honestly, there's nobody better than my friend Nigel Thomas. He's the CEO of Alpha Inbound to talk about building a sales motion from scratch from an early stage scrappy startup. Nigel, thank you for joining the show. I'm happy to have you.
Absolute pleasure, Josh. And hey, there's some great sales leaders out there, much better than myself. But for me, earning it from the ground up, building the process from scratch, being the underdog and challenging the big dogs, there's no better feeling once you conquer that sales process. And I love doing it. And hopefully I can share a few tidbits here and there.
Well, I know you can. So, we're talking pre-show and Nigel was telling me, listen, none of this, he's given himself no credit. Nothing that I built was my idea. I met this guy over here and he implemented something here. I met this person, implemented something here, and then I applied it here. Well, come on, man. Like that is not easy to do. The fact that you're able to, understand and take the good from all these different people you met is super important. But let's dive into that a little bit. Let's talk to the audience about who some of those influencers were for you as you got put in the seat to go build and deploy a sales process.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I think the thing on that, by the way, is the fact that I have extremely high standards and I don't want to settle for, I want to climb a big mountain. So let's just put it like that. But I'm enjoying it. So yeah, so I'm working at Alpha Inbound right now. We're a marketing agency, work direct to consumer brands. We help them get more customers on paid social. Prior to this, I was working in a marketing agency that's helping realtors. And as you probably well know, realtors are hard clients. So I learned a lot from that. But someone who came in as a consultant to really help develop our sales process, his name is Darren Lucia, and he helped build Grand Central Hub. They sold to GoDaddy for about $124 million. Great SaaS product. And he built most of the sales team from scratch and really showed them their process, his playbook. And he helped us build our sales playbook. So I learned a lot from that. A lot, not just about the process, but how to have conviction. I think for me, the number one thing in sales is, are you in control of the process? And of course, that's conviction. That's tonality. That's understanding your ICP inside out and having that process to take them through. But at the end of the day, when you show up on that call for the first time, you never met that person, you got about 3 seconds to make an impression, probably less. What is it going to be? Is it going to be different to everyone else they've spoken to today? Because guess what? If it's not, they're going to forget you in a heartbeat.
So Nigel, I think the conviction thing is interesting because if you're a founder, right, and you created a product or a service, there's a good chance you're passionate about it. So many times the conviction piece is going to be there, but that's not always translating into sales. So if you take a step back, right? And say, I've got to learn how to sell and go sell this thing. Where did you start? What was the first thing you wanted to do?
Yeah, for sure. So you're damn right. I mean, look, without strategy and without process, like one of the best quotes from Abraham Lincoln is, if he was going to chop down a tree and he had 6 hours, he'd spend the first 4 hours sharpening his axe. That's key to sales. You need to focus on sharpening that process day in, day out. So yeah, if we look at it, we've got really a 3-step process. And I think the first is really listening. Then we do like a bit of an audit our side, and this is more specific to our industry. And then that last call, which a lot is obviously similar in SaaS, it's a demo, but that's where you're selling. Now, the first part here is we're trying to understand what the prospect's pain points are and, why do they need this product? But a lot of people, they say they listen. We've got 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. Most people, especially founders, they love to talk, man. You know how it is. They love to talk about their product. But on the first call, you should be listening, because you're here to listen to that person. It's when you come to the sales call that you're arming yourself with that knowledge to then sell to that specific person. So I think understanding that is like an overarching principle that you need to build into your process. And if you want, I can get into that discovery call and how that process works to make sure you have that conviction and control throughout, if that would be helpful.
Yeah, I mean, I do want to do that, but I'm also thinking, let's even take a step back from there. Like, if you don't have people to talk to, there's no one to listen to, right? So oftentimes that top end of the funnel in terms of how you go to market, how you gain interest. So I think you mentioned to me, you started this company with zero reputation. Nobody knew who you were. That's the hardest place to start. So how did you take the universe of direct to consumer brands, which is a big universe, and narrow it into, who do we talk to? Where are we the best fit? Where are we going to win?
Yeah, definitely. So again, you've always got to use your experience to your advantage. I'd done quite a lot of cold email prior to this, and that was with various different companies. So I brought that to the table. But for these guys, like, they get hundreds, and I'm talking about hundreds of cold emails every single day with different software, marketing agencies, all kinds of crap in their inbox. So you really need to stand out in their inbox. So taking the time to really understand that specific target group and ICP is extremely important. So for us, what we would really focus on is, let's just say, one target market. So let's just say supplement brands, for example. Now, as you well know, in any market, there's sub-niches, there's sub-markets. And within those sub-markets, they have different languages. So it's one thing talking about the pain points to that prospect, but it's another thing in speaking their language to them. So if we're going to send out a batch of cold emails or direct outreach, whatever it's going to be, we need to really understand the lingo of speaking to those people. And if I'm being honest with you, the best way to do that is to get on the phone with people from that target market and have a conversation with them. Then you will pick up the language. And how do you do this? Honestly, you just reach out to people on LinkedIn. You just reach out to people via email and just tell them the truth. You're starting an agency, you want to do X, Y, and Z. You just want to have a quick conversation, ask them a few questions, blah, 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 blah. And if you don't get someone to say yes to you, this is the truth. You've not spoken and banged on enough doors, because someone will say yes to you. And once you get that first person, guess what? They'll know 10 other people. So you can ask them. And then you arm yourself with that knowledge. You can start sending out some emails, but don't skip that part of the process. It's extremely important.
Tell them the truth. What a novel idea.
Yeah, it's interesting because it's quite rare in this market, isn't it?
It's funny. Well, that market research, like guerrilla market research, we'll call it, is super important. Yeah. So just a quick anecdote. I had Craig Coppola on the show not too long ago, and he's in the commercial real estate business. He talked a little bit about real estate, and he bought a software company that services that market. And the first thing that he did was had his team pick up the phone and just start calling people who would be potential users, not to sell the platform, but to understand their day in the life. So that as, he put together what the demo was going to be, what they were going to be listening for, what the value prop was going to be, it was rooted in their language and their problems and their pain points. And it sounds like that was the exact same approach that you took.
Yeah, 100%. I've got an analogy for you, Josh. It'll be cool for founders out there listening. It's called, what is Suzy having for lunch? So Suzy's, imagine you're in a park somewhere. Suzy's over there sat on the park bench. Now, you got to figure out what she's having for lunch. And again, how are we going to do that? Okay, so we can do some research. We can go on Google. We can figure out where Suzy is on social media. We can go to the most powerful technology platforms and build out an incredible algorithm and predict exactly what she's going to have for lunch. Or we can just go and ask her. Yeah, like, people overcomplicate it so much. Go and ask Suzy what she's having for lunch. And that seems ridiculous when I spell it out like that, but that's what a lot of founders are doing. They're tiptoeing around, like trying to figure things out. Just go and ask the goddamn question.
I love it. Go and ask the goddamn question. That's fantastic. All right. So we did the guerrilla market research, right? This is our first step. We asked people the simple questions. We started to collect some knowledge about what we're going to do. And you applied then cold email, it sounds like, to start generating demand. Now, like you already said this, but cold email, people's inboxes are crowded. Yeah. How did you break through?
Sure. So 4 billion people use email today. And by the way, people told me when I started this business, hey, Nigel, cold email doesn't work anymore for e-commerce brands. Okay.
Everything's dead, right?
Yeah, exactly. That makes me excited because that means they're stopping doing it. So more market share for me, great. But the thing is when did people lose their personality? And the reason I'm telling you that is if you get an email, like our emails aren't what you would think are cold emails, big blocks of boring text. You know, no one likes that. Let's just be completely honest about it. No one fucking likes that. So I don't know if we can swear on this, by the way, but I'm just...
Hey man, it's my show. You can do whatever you want.
Okay, fuck it. Right. But in all seriousness, we put pictures in there, you know, pictures which are related to their industry. Let me just give you an example. We work with some CBD brands. We got some great results for a CBD brand, 420 that time of year when everyone's smoking weed. What we did at the same time of year, if you remember, Elon Musk was just about to buy Twitter. So we send out a cold email to CBD brand owners. The first line reads, hey, trust you're enjoying 420, just like the new Twitter owner. And then it had a GIF of Elon Musk smoking weed on the Joe Rogan podcast. Bang. Got their attention. 80% open rate.
Wow.
The next
80%.
From a batch of like 260 leads that are all, again, we spend a lot of time doing our targeting. Yeah, doing our lead sourcing, enrichment, making sure like less than 1% bounce rate. Let me actually, before I go any further on that email, this is a really important point for outreach and I think sales overall. You need to think that if you're going to like do all the automation, buy lists and all that kinds of crap and save time, you aren't a good manager, because the thing is that if you put crap into your system, then what's going to happen is you're not only wasting the sales team's time, you're wasting the entire team's time. So this person comes in who's bad for your business. Yeah, you might close them, you might get them through. But at the end of the day, they're now pulling resource from all of your customer support team, all of your marketing, operations, everything. And if you just did some hard work on the front end, you would have negated all of that wasted effort and you'd actually be able to get people who are going to stay longer for your business, because at the end of the day, if you can't retain people, you haven't got a business.
No shortcuts.
Exactly. No shortcuts. And then in the rest of the email, we would usually use, honestly, I like to go with Cialdini's, persuasion principles. And obviously one of those being social proof. So if you have a case study, at this point we include that. And again, we talk about very specific things that only CBD owners would know about their product and how to market it on the internet. And this is just really capturing their attention. So overall results for this campaign, and I will just put it out there, they weren't all this good. Like this is one of the better ones, but 80% open rate, 15% response rate from 260 leads. This is 20 to 25 discovery calls booked, 6 contracts closed, all multi-5-figure contracts.
Wow. Those are impressive results. So if we talk about the key components to the top end, building that top end, niche wins, right? Targeting matters. When you're targeting, we really have to understand the market, speak their language, talk to people first before we just make some blanket assumptions. Those assumptions are going to kill you. And then build, everything comes back to data. I don't care if it's marketing or if it's sales. Build your database very intentionally about what you've learned. And then, those results speak for themselves. So you said 20 discovery calls?
25 discovery calls, because not everyone who responds obviously is going to
show up.
Be a good fit. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. All right. So now we've built the top of the funnel. We understand what that process is going to look like. Now let's transition to the 3-step process. Listen, which is your discovery call. Talk to me about what a good discovery call looks like.
Oh yeah, I love this. And by the way, a lot of marketers can do the first part right. That's the easiest part. The hard part is when you get on the phone with these guys, because especially if you're talking to pretty reputable business owners. And I think also throw in there, for marketing agencies in our space, there's been, because of the barriers to entry are so low and anyone with a laptop and an internet connection can start one of these businesses, lots of these e-commerce brands, especially the newer founders, have really been burnt before. So their trust level is like the worst it could possibly be. So, I mean, I've had some of the brands that we've worked with, they won't even turn their cameras on because they hate marketing agencies that much. And in my head, I'm like, well, that's a challenge I'm going to overcome. And by the way, I did it on one occasion. And she now works with us. It's fantastic. But what I was going to say is, so it's key that you need to nail this part. So the first part of it is, again, and I learned this from that guy, the consultant, is you've got to have a preamble. So do a little bit of chit chat at the start, but then you need to be the one who transitions. So you transition, hey, Josh, I know you're busy. I respect your time. You good if we just get straight down to business? Yeah, fantastic. Right, you've got a buy-in. Now, straight into the preamble. I'm just going to make something up on the fly. Mine changes call to call, depending on who I'm speaking to, but something along the lines of, hey, yeah, so here at Alpha Inbound, we work with 7 and 8-figure direct-to-consumer brands. We help drive them more traffic on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. Now, our discovery process, we have a call like this to ask some questions, understand your challenges, and if it makes sense, we'll book in an audit, do an evaluation of your business, and then we'll book in one more call where we show you a custom roadmap of how we can help you guys out. And at the end of that call, if it makes sense, we'll talk about moving forward a project. Now, does that all make sense to you, Josh? If you then say yes, you've now confirmed and you've accepted, I'm going to take you through that 3-step process, which, by the way, isn't just this discovery call. You've now planted the seeds for all parts of that process. You've now taken complete control of the situation. Now you need to transition into listening. So probably what a good question is to ask, very open-ended, to get them to open up to you. Depends where it's coming from. If you've booked it from traffic or whatever, you just say, hey, why did you book the call today, Josh? Blah, 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 blah. And then obviously you need to start asking. You are now the doctor who needs to start asking the questions.
Yeah. So, listen, I love it. I love it. I love setting expectations. I love having a clear roadmap for what success is going to look like. I like getting their commitment to that roadmap so that you at least verbally have them on the hook. It makes it that a little bit harder for them to back out. Not saying that people won't do it, but at least you're getting that verbal buy-in from them. When we talk about asking questions, so I'm a firm believer that the types of questions that you ask can actually set you apart in the sales process. And too often people get into their almost their verbal survey and just start checking boxes. So talk to me about how you ask questions, how you start to uncover what matters to these people. Yeah.
So I think, again, from a sales team lead point of view, and I think Alex Hormozi talks about this a little bit. I'm not sure if you know who he is, but he's built some interesting sales teams. And essentially the best scripts, or a lot of them that I've seen, are literally just questions. Because this is a roadmap to keep your sales team locked in. So then they can't do all of that verbal bullshit, because it's just question. Okay, no worries. Now we can get them back in on the roadmap with the next question and link them back in, next question. So for me, even though I've done a lot of these calls now, I have my question script up every single time. And this keeps me locked in. So if there's someone who's going to be thrown me off, whatever, it's fine. I can pull them back in. So, questions that are really good to kind of uncover the problems. For us, obviously, we're talking about marketing and sales. So we'd say to them something along the lines of, set them up for the question. Yeah, what do you do right now, current situation? And then what is the most difficult part of that process? Now you're going to start getting problems to uncover. And then you want to dive into each of those things, but let them speak. I think at the start of the call, you need to really be listening and arming yourself with information. And I think a lot of founders think this is really difficult. Sure, you can have a pad of paper there, but if you really listen, shut down notifications, turn off all your computer, phone, and everything else, you'll be surprised at actually how good you are at humans, because we've been doing this for thousands of years. We're pretty damn good at it. But the last thing I'll say to keep you on track is the BANT qualification process. So BANT being an acronym for budget, authority, need, and timing. Those 4 things, doesn't matter what you're selling, you need it on every single thing. So budget, have they got enough money to afford your service? Authority, are they the actual decision maker who can make the decision? If not, who is the decision maker? Need, do they actually need it? And this one, you have to uncover the problems, see if they actually need it or they're window shopping. And then obviously timing. They might need it, but is it right now? If not, clarify exactly when that's going to be. If people are going through, if they aren't bank qualified, then you've not got a good sales process. You should only be sending people through to the next stage of your process, people who are bank qualified. So when because I could give you questions, but it's going to be different for every industry. But what I would do is I would structure your questions around BANT qualification.
Yeah, I have a little bit of a love-hate with BANT, right? So it's an old framework. It's been around a long time.
Yeah, sure.
And conceptually, it conceptually makes sense to me, right?
Yeah.
But the problem I have with it is if you put yourself in the customer's shoes, nobody wants to be qualified. It doesn't feel good. And you can feel when it's happening. So the best of the best can get to BANT without ever asking a BANT question. If you know what I mean.
Sure.
Right.
Yes,
like that's where and the other thing is it's not a one-time thing.
Yeah.
Just because somebody says today, well, my timing is the end of next month, or I have this much money or whatever, that could all change tonight when they go home and see their family.
True.
So
True.
I think if we think of it more of a fluid thing than this, like, okay, you're qualified, move on, then it'll change how you have that dialogue and how you answer those questions or ask those questions.
Yeah, I think here's the key thing to kind of link them together: stories.
Yes.
Best. So I'd say, yeah, sure. I'm kind of trying to give something so it can be a framework for all industries, but you need to know the stories, and especially if you have success stories around your previous customers. And for me, at least, I don't know about yourself, Josh, but this has been the most powerful thing, and how you can make it more natural. And yeah, especially if they start veering off the process, you can pull them back in with a story. That's what I found to be the most, like, the best for persuasion, really.
Totally agree. Yeah. So I think the story is the only way you should answer a question. Right. When you're in that discovery moment, right? Your goal is to get them to talk. But at some point they want to hear what the hell you do. Right. Yeah. And you don't want to get into pitch mode, because that's not, people shut down. They think they want you to talk. But then as soon as you start pitching, they're like, oh shit, I shouldn't have let them talk. Like this is fucking horrible. Right. So the way you as a seller answer a question, so you've drilled down into that pain funnel. You're like, oh, well, how long have you been doing that? What kind of results are you getting? What's it costing you? Because you said a good thing there. Like, you can't just ask questions that are all over the place just to ask questions. They have to be targeted and drill down into something that matters. But as soon as you see the opening and it's time for you to respond to something, you respond with, oh, great. Well, guess what? Client X, Y, and Z had this exact same problem. The way we solved it was like this, and they got this result. Have you tried that? Now you're back, putting it back to them. You know what I mean?
Yeah, 100%. And I think, I don't know about yourself, Josh, but I think you should practice these stories, especially if you're early stage. Like, I mean, again, this worked for me. I don't know if anyone else would find it useful. I would literally be in front of the mirror practicing the stories, because I think another thing about the discovery process is tonality. Like, tonality, I actually think that is just so undervalued in sales. Again, if you listen back to yourself, most people say like, and fill the gap in. People who speak with confidence, they can pause. They can lower their voice. They can up their voice. They can increase the tempo. Throw that in with stories and questions, then you're just going to sound totally different to everyone else. And it's a pattern interrupt,
It is. Tonality is important, and it comes back to confidence. And your whole concept of practice is a good one, because in sales, we don't practice, to be honest with you. We might do some role plays. Our manager might have us run through a script or whatever, but you're speaking to the heart of a couple of guests I had, Georgiana Zeldin and Jonathan Mahan from the Practice Lab, both guests on the show. You should check them out. But really, how do you do deep practice as a seller, right? And this is things that you're talking about. How do you ask the right questions? What happens when someone asks you something that goes off of the standard path? Really, really important stuff. I'm glad you said that.
Yeah, and there's this guy on LinkedIn that I've been following recently. His name, I think it's Robbie Crabtree, and he used to be a lawyer. And now he's essentially, through his like storytelling and the fact that he figured out he used storytelling to win over all of these insane cases. Now he's transitioned his career into helping founders go out to secure investments through, guess what? Storytelling. And
Excellent.
One of the best things he says is every single founder should carry a book with them everywhere they go, a storybook, constantly update that thing all the time. And the best way to secure that investment is by world-class storytelling.
That is a great point. I could not emphasize that enough. That's storytelling is so critical, and it's what sets you apart, right? Your bank of stories that you can pull out at any time in order to connect with somebody. I think it's huge. Well,
100%.
We could go on for discovery for probably ever, but we're not going to. So one of the things that you said is controlling the process, right? You set the stage. This is what the process looks like. You get through discovery. Do you give them now an opportunity to get out? How do we know that we are agreeing to move on and the exit criteria are met to move on to our audit phase?
Yeah, sure. Can I just ask you a question quickly?
Yeah, please.
Which is, if you don't use BANT, what do you use?
I don't use a specific framework. Okay. I really think about it. There's BANT, there's MEDIC. They all have their merits, right? And what I'm looking for is one of the things that's most important to me is a compelling event.
Sure.
So you talked about targeting on the front end. If you're targeting the right fit customers, there's a certain level of inherent qualification in that.
Yeah.
You know that these types of companies are the right fit companies that can buy from me. So there's an inherent amount of qualification there, and that upfront work matters. Depending on who you're talking to, you may know that, all right, this person's nothing more than a champion, or maybe they're a gatekeeper. Maybe we need to go. So now you need to figure out, what are my next steps to get to the right person? Maybe you're to the right person. Again, that's part of your BANT criteria, but you're keeping that in your mind. Timing to me is all about the compelling event. Why would they move, and why would they move now? That's one of the things that if you don't figure that out, there's no deal. And I think if we think of timing more through the lens of compelling event, then you're going to see more velocity when there is a compelling event than not. That could be an upcoming board meeting. It could be a conference that we need to drive attendees to. It could be our revenue dipped and we have our Q3 earnings call coming up. There's a million different things that could be compelling events, but part of your discovery process should be really understanding what that compelling event looks like.
Yeah, that's really good advice. I think in the last company I was in, and we built like an inside sales team and stuff, it was transferring that, because for me, like obviously on the intuition side, I can do it, but putting that into the process, like how do we put the compelling event into a process and scale a massive team?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think those frameworks do that really well. I think when you get to a cranky old man like me who thinks he knows everything, then sometimes we're like, screw the frameworks. I just do it my way. But at the end of the day, we're all using some sort of framework.
Yeah, 100%. I actually think that's got some real merit in it, by the way. And yeah, I'm going to think about that myself. Always looking to update the process, and always a student, man.
Yeah, no, for sure. So you talk about the audit, right? And to me, that comes down to what we call a sales offer, right? Like what's the offer for me to you to move on? So how do you decide that person at the end of a discovery call moves on and is worth an audit?
Yeah. So there's certain unit economics in e-commerce and direct to consumer that mean that we know if we can help that company. A lot of it comes down to ad spend. So how much money can they spend on media? That's a pretty easy one for us at our stage of growth. And we just know those numbers inside out. So I think we've got to the stage where we've done so many of these analysis, we just know the numbers inside out. So I can just ask 3 questions. Yeah. And yeah, even with all of the BANT stuff, if they don't hit those economical numbers, then, like budget is out the window. So I think that's the main thing. And then the other thing for us is, I think the kind of market they're in. So again, we like supplement brands. And this is actually a really good point in understanding your ICP. Because in e-commerce with supplement brands, they have much better margins because they control the entire supply chain. So they will usually have like 70, 80% margins, as opposed to with fashion apparel brands will have like 50% margins. And now what's happened in the paid social space is all the big players like Coca-Cola, Pepsi and stuff, they're dumping massive digital budgets in now, and they don't care about returns. They just care about impressions. So they're massively inflating up the costs of everything. Plus there's more competition coming in anyway. So when you could get away in the golden era of having really poor margins on Facebook and whatever else, you can't get away with that anymore. So you need really good back-end economics. So having good margins and then really having a product which is a membership around a lifestyle. So supplements, we don't just buy them once, do we? We keep buying them on subscription again and again and again. So we really try, and because here's the thing, like, it doesn't matter how good your content and all that stuff or in marketing, strong economics always wins the day. If you can pay 3 times more to acquire a customer than your competition, you will always win no matter what. So we try and game the system around that, and we just pick the brands who have better unit economics. And then guess what? We put all the sexy marketing stuff on top, and we always come out the winners. Well, not always, but nearly always.
So, I mean, you just hit on something that is so extremely powerful. And everyone who's an individual contributor, if you're a sales leader listening, you're a founder, what Nigel just said is you need to understand the business of your prospects. He's talking about knowing their margins, knowing how they make money, knowing their unit economics. If your team doesn't know those things, how those businesses make money in the back of their mind, they're never going to ask the right questions. Your qualification questions, your discovery survey, that shit doesn't matter. They don't care about it. They care about their business, how they make money, and their unit economics. If your team cannot speak to their business specifically and ask questions about their business that show that you understand their business, none of this stuff matters. Nigel, I think you hit on something that is like the core of this whole show. And, process and everything is great, but we're not teaching our sales teams business and business acumen. And that's what you just said is the most important thing. And that's why you're winning.
Yeah. And here's the thing with marketers, they'll be inside let's just say, for an example, a Facebook ad account, and they'll be looking at all these fancy numbers. And then all of a sudden the numbers will go haywire. And sure, it might be because of something as has actually happened in the ad account. But guess what? A product could have gone out of stock on the website. Now you need to know logistics and supply chain. How long is it going to take to get back into stock? Because the thing is, if you're just looking inside Facebook and you don't know that information, you're now making decisions without having the clarity of that information, which are all going to be inaccurate. And here's the other thing. When you speak to the business owners, they will see you as a marketer or they will see you as a business owner because they're going to look at you from the macro perspective.
Correct.
And that's what the main thing we talk about and I talk about to people is macro versus micro. Micro is just looking at marketing, which we all know marketing is extremely important for business. It's not just business, like you just said, though, is it? Operations, finance, recruitment, culture, sales, marketing, human resources. If you can understand all of those things, and if you can actually get to a decision maker who also sees from that wider perspective, you're going to stand out above the competition. And with marketing agencies, no one I literally cannot understand it, Josh, but no one seems to understand that. And for me, it was blaringly obvious. And the only way I figured it out is because I took the time to get on calls with these guys, going right back to the start and asked them questions and listened.
I mean, it's huge. And it's a non-threatening way to get you to the decision makers. If you start asking questions about the business that person can't answer, you're not talking to the right person. And if it's part of your process, listen, we can't be helpful to you if we don't understand how that works in your business. They're going to introduce you to someone who does understand. And now you've got, right? Like that is the power of really knowing the business of the business you're in. You really have to do it. Yeah. So Nigel, I think that's a mic drop moment for you. We're going to wrap up the show on that. Tell the audience, well, actually, before you tell the audience. So my 3 takeaways, right? I love a little alliteration, targeting truth and trust. 3 things I took away from our conversation, right? Targeting niche wins, be specific, know the business where you're going to be successful and be able to really wrap that into how you go to market on the top end of the funnel. Truth. I love that. Just ask the fucking question. What do you want to know? Ask the question, and then that'll allow you to build trust with people on the back end, right? that comes back to the thread through this whole thing. Know the business of our business. That's going to be a trust builder, regardless of what your process is. Sales is a trust game.
Yeah, I'm going to add in a bonus one.
All right, bonus.
You might already know this, but this has been a real good little trick, and it really does help. At the end of your discovery call, always book in the next call, no matter what. Always get that call on the calendar. But when you do it, get it on the calendar in front of them and get them to accept the meeting. I think the statistics show there's something like 50% more likely to show up to the next meeting if they accept it with you on the call. There
we go. A little sales hack for you. I like that. Yeah. All right, Nigel, where can the audience find you? What should they know? Where should they go?
Sure. So go to Google, type in Nigel Thomas, Alpha Inbound. LinkedIn is the first thing that will pop up. Go in there, have a look at my profile. If you love brutal honesty, if you want to be told what you need to hear, not what you want to hear, you'll have some fun. Reach out to me. We can have an honest conversation. I love talking to other entrepreneurs, going after their passions. And if I can help you out in one way or another, I'd also love that.
Fantastic. Well, Nigel, thanks for joining the show. If you enjoyed this content, you enjoyed me, enjoyed Nigel, give us a review on your favorite podcast platform. That'll help us expand our reach. Until next time, this was Love Selling, Hate Sales.